Oh, sorry. Nobody showed up to go to training. I was telling you everything that I would have told you with regard to go to training, but it was all taking place in my head. I was having a great conversation with you. And unfortunately, I think I made it all up. Anyway, let's go back to square one, and I'll tell you what was going on in the crazy brain. Okay? So this week, we have two big topics to talk about. We have internal public relations, and we have a distribution strategy. They may seem like they're diverse tactics, but they're actually things that take place, a series of dots, and all those dots can get connected. So we're going to talk a little bit today how those dots connect. First off, with regard to internal PR, I think it's important to understand where the public relations function resides. Now, you may be saying to yourself, but I'm just a small company. It's me and my partner. I do half of everything. My partner does half of everything else, and the rest we just don't worry about. Do the math, it'll be funny. Anyway, the reality is that when we talk about public relations and a lot of the other subjects that you're learning at school, sometimes it makes sense to really not focus on your case study company, but to maybe use a bigger company so that you get lots of content, lots of examples to work with. And this is one of those instances where I think it makes sense because as a small company, you're doing you're not performing the public relations function. You're doing public relations activities and the ones that fit into your busy schedule. So that makes it kind of tough. So with that, let's pretend we're all in a big company. And the issue boils down to where does public relations sit organizationally? Does it sit in the marketing department or does it sit in the corporate communications? Does it report to the president or the CEO? Or does it report to the chief marketing officer? Many people make the argument that there's not 4 P's as far as the marketing mix goes. Do you know what the 4 P's are, right? Product, price, place, and promotion. Well, and promotion means paid for promotion. People will make the argument that there's 5 P's. Product, price, place, promotion, and public relations. Okay, so if the 5th P is public relations and it's part of marketing, that makes sense. But then it's also can be part of corporate communications, because when you look at the function of public relations, we don't necessarily deal with target markets. That's what marketers deal with. We deal with stakeholders. And what are we doing? We're promoting the wholesomeness of the brand. And in that, hopefully there will be opportunities to engage people so that they buy goods and services. But what you might say, what we're selling, there's no price for, and that's the brand itself. Whereas in marketing, the brand is certainly part of the overall marketing effort, but to the extent that we also want to sell goods and services. So those are the 2 realms that we're working in, and that public relations can fit into either one of those. Now, something else that we deal with, and you're going to be dealing with regard to your distribution strategy, that I kind of feel parallels this whole discussion, and that is social media. Where does social media fit? Well, one might say that social media, because you're interacting with customers after they've already made a purchase, that it's part of operations. Others might say that social media is really where you're promoting the brand, so it should be part of the public relations function, and then depending on where public relations is. And then yet others will say, no, it's actually marketing. Social media is a marketing channel. You know, what's funny is if you go to like Indeed or any of the other big job boards, you may find a couple companies where they're actually advertising for the same position in 2 different parts of the organization. Marketing department is looking for a social media manager, and lo and behold, corporate communications is looking for a social media manager. that poor person might as well just go ahead and split their personality if the job is filled by just one person. If they hire two unique ones, then another whole set of organizational challenges come into play. Okay, so we've got the question of where does the function sit, and that applies for social media as well. And I will tell you that oftentimes there's not a right or wrong answer. For example, if you take a look at Ford's social media channel, Ford has traditionally placed social media under the marketing arm. Yet, if you go to their main competitor, General Motors, where do you find social media? Well, it's part of corporate communications, public relations. It's on the other side of the house. Go ahead and do yourself a favor. Go take a look at both Facebook pages for Ford and for General Motors and see what differences, what nuances that you can see. It'll tell you a lot about how the organization is planning its communication strategy. Okay, so we're back to the question, what the heck is internal PR? Internal PR is a group of stakeholders that work for the company. Now, I have provided you some information. I'll provide you more. With regard to when I was at Disney, we actually had an opportunity to go through a corporate change that had to deal first with the internal stakeholders, the cast members, and then, and only then, did it move to an external campaign. What happened was when the Walt Disney World was decided to open the Animal Kingdom, the thought was that they were creating a zoological park that operated like a theme park. And so there was the park, the chief executive officer for each of the theme parks at Walt Disney World is a vice president. And that vice president runs everything within that theme park. At the Animal Kingdom, when it was open, it was decided that there would be parallel structures. So, for each area of the theme park, for example, Africa, and for Asia, and for what they called the center part where the Tree of Life was, Safari Village, and then the front end, those were the main areas of the park. The front end is also where the ticketing occurred. There were not only operational managers for each of those areas, but then there were animal managers, which we call curators. And some were large mammal curators, some were small mammal curators, and some were in the front end. There were a lot of bird and waterfowl in the front area, and so there were aviary curators. The first time I tried to make this video, by the way, I kept saying aviator curators, and I kept thinking to myself, curators that were flying around in airplanes. No, it never happened. Aviary. Got to be careful with the words we choose. Okay, I digress, and you're saying, come on, get on with the story. So, what happened was, as data was coming in, we were finding that our target market, now speaking from a marketing side, we weren't getting the same type of results that we were wanting, because people were coming to the Animal Kingdom and seeing a zoo. It was their perception, and what they really wanted to see was another theme park. So we had to put more emphasis on the theme park. So the Animal Kingdom, where it started as a zoological park that was a theme park, became a theme park that had zoological aspects to it. What's interesting, though, out of all that change from a talent management standpoint, the director of animal programs at the Animal Kingdom down the road ultimately became the VP of the Animal Kingdom. And so there behind the scenes there was that emphasis on animals continued to stay, because it was a veterinarian that became the vice president. Now, in order to make that change, though, because the cast had been taught, had been trained, had been recruited under the pretense that it was a zoo that was also going to be a theme park, uh, a lot of internal work needed to be done. A lot of change needed to be done with the internal cast members, the internal stakeholders. And one of the things that came out of all this was this training about the change and the external campaign to the external cast members used a word that almost sounded like Swahili. The word for hello in Swahili is jambo, and the phrase or the word that was being bantered about for this change and this new campaign was not Jambo, but Nadazu. And once everybody started to learn what was going on, it became pretty exciting even for the cast members because we engaged the cast members in order to talk to guests as they were coming in and use the new word Nadazu with the cast members, where before a lot of times in the African parts of the animal kingdom, they were using Jambo to greet guests. Now everybody across the park was using Nadazu. And ultimately, after the internal stakeholders were primed and ready to go with regard to that, what we communicated in the external campaign, and there's a great commercial out there on the internet. I think I provide you the link to it. And by the way, in the very last scene of that commercial, yours truly is in the back. I was part of that large picture, and I'll tell you that the nanoseconds that appears was about 2 hours in the unbelievable Florida heat in order to make that picture, that little bit of B-roll film come together. Anyway, like I said, behind or the inside baseball story, I guess is what that was. So where we stand is that we're now ready to communicate this to everybody. And in that commercial, Nadazu is finally spelled out phonetically and broken down by syllable. And when it's done, what you realize that everybody has been saying is not hello, not some form of jambo, greeting, welcome, or maybe a Malaysian word, but Nadazu is actually not a zoo. And that was how the campaign from both a internal public relations communication standpoint occurred and how that mirrored what was going on with the external stakeholders. So again, the one of the big concepts with regard to internal PR is the mirroring of the 4 Ps, but what actually occurs is change. And we're communicating changes within the organization to our internal stakeholders. And when we deal with change, it's not the 4 Ps of the mix, but it's the 4 Ps of change and transition. And those are, first, we need to make sure that we communicate the purpose. Why is this happening? And then we need to create a picture. What is this all going to look like when it's all done? How is this going to be better? And you got to build and get people to buy into that picture, your stakeholders to build into that picture. Then you've got to provide them the plan. Well, how is this going to take place? What are the steps that we're going to be doing in order to make this change, so that nobody is surprised by anything? Is what it boils down to. And then finally, the last part, P, the part, P for part. What part do I play in making this happen? And that is probably one of the most important components, because if your internal stakeholders are contributing, we have a saying at my house, and the saying is real simple. If you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. And so from this internal stakeholder change management component, what we're saying is that show people what part they play, and they'll help you accomplish this picture that's the result of this change that needs to occur. So internal PR deals with change, it deals with communication, and the 4 Ps. Now, if you want to learn more about this, I would highly suggest, it's not a big book, it's a small book. You could probably read it in a day or two, a little over 100 pages, by William Bridges, and it's called Transitions. It's a great book, and you'll learn about the 4P model along with a number of other insights with regard to change and transition. Okay, a lot of talking. let's talk with regard to distribution strategy. Now, one of the things with regard to distribution strategy is that we're starting with newsworthy event that we're communicating. And more than likely, we started with the press release. But now the question is, how do we get our money's worth? How do we get the bang out of this newsworthy event and this press release? And how do we distribute it and get it to work for us in a number of different ways? Well, one of those ways is that you're going to be looking at, by the way, there's a great example on the platform. Use it as a template and then customize it with your information. Don't try to recreate the wheel. The distribution strategy template on the platform is wonderful. You just need to modify it for your sake and improve upon it. Now, let me tell you that one of the big areas of focus is going to be it's going to be your distribution strategy as it pertains to social media. Now, social media is different than when we're dealing with the media, the press. We can take a press release and just send it out through one of the distribution services, and it will hit a number of outlets, and no public relations person is going to be upset when they get the distribution or when they get the press release. Although, as you looked at last week, you have some information below the 3 ampersands, the 3 pound signs, where you talk about the distribution strategy and you talk about the purpose of that press release. And it's important to be explicit with regard to that. And if you have different stakeholder groups that you're having a different purpose for distributing, then you should be sending out different press releases. Okay, let's come back. So the press release and the distribution strategy as it pertains to social media. If you take the same approach and just blanket send that press release out to social media, social media bloggers and other evangelicals on the evangelists on social media, they don't want to be treated like everybody else. They all have egos. Are any of you bloggers? Do any of you have egos? Of course, we all do. Nothing has made superstars like social media. We're all a star when it comes to social media. So we've got to be careful the way we treat people. Make it one-on-one. Don't make it one-to-many like you would when you're sending out the traditional press release. The other thing is make sure that you're targeting the information in the social media channel to how that social media channel works best. For example, who is on Pinterest? It's like the demographics on Pinterest are just overwhelming. It's like 80% female. So my son, who is developing a lacrosse site focused on men's lacrosse called Lexology, is he going to be doing anything on Pinterest? Absolutely not. It's not his target. That's not where his target market is. Not only do you have to know where your target market or your stakeholders are, but then you have to know what's expected within that channel. What type of stories, what type of content, what type of newsworthy content needs to go into that particular channel. And then what you need to do is take your press release and begin to customize it. So it becomes the nugget that you break down and use a number of different ways based on what part of the distribution strategy you're focusing in on at that point in time. Okay, folks, that's been a lot of information. I know you've been writing like crazy, and if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call, 407-267-8600. By the way, I'm working feverishly to get you your grades back. The platform has been just as new to your instructors and as it is to you. And it's created a couple of obstacles, but we're moving now, and hopefully I'll have week 1 finished by the end of today, and then beyond to week 2. Get you some feedback with regard to your press release very quickly. Okay. That's all I got right at the moment. By the way, if you're not in a group and you're having problems with finding a group, please call me, 407-267-8600. That group assignment has a big chunk of points, and you need to be working in a group. Okay? And those are self-selected groups, by the way. The instructor will not assign you. But I want to talk to you and help you through the process. So if you're still having challenges, pick up the phone and give me a call, 407-267-8600. Hey, have a great afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now. And now I'm going to go back to having that conversation in my mind.